them. And I work in a store that is pretty much all women. So whenever they're like addressing us or when they're talking, they're always like, hey ladies. So I've taken it upon myself as someone that is non-binary to use this to not listen. And whenever anyone addresses a group as ladies, I am not included. So when they say, hey ladies, let's like stop talking, or hey ladies, let's like get to work, I will do none of it because you're not talking to me. You're not talking to me. You're not talking to me. So I will not listen to anything that is said when it is started with, hey, ladies. I'm a theydy, not a lady, a theydy.
And she's serious. Good morning. Calm down, lady. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. What a great way to start the day. Monday. Ba-da, ba-da-da-da. 7:04 a.m. Central Time. On the Wake Up America show, you can't trust that day, but you can trust me, AP for Liberty. Matt Unruh, Brad Beckman, he's paid to be here. Barney Stiles, Relaxia McCroy, and Joni Rankin hanging out in the chat. Nice to see you guys. Don't forget to click that like button here today. I'm AP. They call me AP for Liberty. You can find me at AP for Liberty all over the internet. Dad Bod Baboon is here. We needed his expertise on something last week. I think he was the one who was excited to see if Camellia was going to be on the Friday Night Freedom Arcade, which, spoiler alert, she was. I think Dad Bud wasn't there. Tisk tisk. You can't miss a single minute of any of the shows that we are producing on the 4 Liberty Network. Good morning. Coffee's hot. Headlines are hotter. You get to be here with me, super hot Austin Petersen. The man who refuses to feed you the scripted narrative. This is Wake Up America. This is the most unfiltered, unapologetic Liberty show in the country, streaming straight into your mind from the heartland of America. Wake Up America. It's a nice little double entendre. If you're here, it's because you probably aren't the type of person to settle for the story that the ruling class hands you. You're here because you know that the world is run by people who think that they're untouchable, and you want to know how to beat them. And here we're going to tell you exactly how. Today we're going to open with a move that has the professional grievance industry shaking in their boots. The Department of Education is demanding that schools prove that they aren't using race-based admissions. I'd say fantastic. You know, if you're innocent, you have nothing to fear. If you're guilty, sunlight is the only cure. And make no mistake, the loudest outrage you are going to hear on this issue come from the most exposed frauds in the world. We're going to pivot to another story after that one. Donald Trump is considering reclassifying marijuana. Mr. President, thank you, sir. You'll love to hear it. Now, you know me, I've never been shy about pointing out where I disagree with President Trump, but on this, I'm absolutely with him, as often I am when the policy is right. Liberty is always a risk, but in my opinion, it's the only risk worth taking. The alternative, of course, the smothering embrace of the government. We're going to break down why, if Trump does this, it is a move that is good for liberty and good for the country, despite the protestations of the anti-saloon league online. At 8 a.m. this morning, we're going to have a really great debate. My friend and respected adversary, Jon Miltimore, is going to join me to mark 80 years since the bombing of Hiroshima. I'll make the case that dropping the bomb was the right choice to end the war and save lives. Jon is going to take the opposite side, and you're going to see why real strength, not hesitation, is what keeps a nation safe. At 8:30 a.m. this morning, Liberty Warrior Cliff Maloney joins us with a big announcement for the movement. And this one's going to shake things up, guys. So you do not want to miss Cliff Maloney at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. And of course, since I love you and since I know you love me, I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. And if we hit our audience goals today, if we raise the $75 to $100 bonus content goal, the $75 goal will unlock a mini documentary of your dreams, probably the best one we've ever made. And then if we go over and above today and we manage to raise $100, then you will unlock a Defense Against the Dark Arts class that you choose the subject of the class, and it will be with a resident abyssal scholar, Professor Glub. You're going to vote on whether he teaches A, the Triton of Tolerance, or B, the Leviathan of Licensing. So there you go. If we hit $75 raised during the Wake Up America show this morning, 100, you get to watch the mini documentary. If we hit 100, you will get a private lesson in Defense Against the Dark Arts with our resident scholar, Professor Glub. You don't want to miss him. He is here coming up from the depths, spending a brief amount of time on land before he returns to the Marianas Trench. All right, folks, let's go deep on this first one, this big topic. Department of Education, the same slow-moving, paper-hoarding behemoth that usually gums up the works, has done something that frankly shocks me. They've actually decided to take aim at an entrenched abuse of power. So the DOE has sent messages to colleges and universities. You say you've stopped race-based admissions? Great. Prove it. And that one demand has made the professional grievance machine screaming like a banshee, because the people who've been gaming the system for decades can feel the ground shifting under their feet. This is why the Trump administration was a good bet overall, because these kinds of policies would never have happened. I can complain all day long about tariffs or J.D. Vance's comments on post-liberalism and all these concepts that most Americans, it's way above their pay grade. But at the end of the day, in fighting tyranny, where the rubber hits the road, it's the Department of Education. And we've been advocating to overturn and abolish the Department of Education for years. Trump would probably sign a bill that made it to his desk, if it made it to his desk. Of course, the Congress are too much of cowards to do something like that. Boo. But if the Department of Education is to exist, if it's doing things like this, it's really hard to complain much, asking colleges and universities to prove that they aren't still using race-based admissions, because we all know how the left works. They love to use language to get around things, to skirt the laws. Here's what we know. A 2023 Supreme Court ruling ruled affirmative action in higher education admissions violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, period. This is why I love the 14th Amendment. A lot of people conservatives especially get mad at it because they're like, oh, the immigration stuff, it really is bad, the anchor babies. But in things like this, the Supreme Court can turn to the 14th Amendment to protect liberty. That's what the 14th Amendment was for. Affirmative action in higher education is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, period. If you're interested in learning more about the 14th Amendment, my recommendation is to you guys is to watch a really cool, I think it's like 20-minute documentary about the history of the 14th Amendment that was produced by the Institute for Justice. It was actually produced by a good friend of mine, and he's a libertarian, so he wouldn't want me to say his name. He's very privacy conscious. You could probably find it anyway, but the Institute for Justice put out a fantastic documentary about the 14th Amendment that I highly recommend. A little bit more on this case. Asian American applicants with the same SAT scores as white applicants had a significantly lower acceptance rate, and minority applicants with lower scores often leapfrog them. Now, I find that to be interesting because the right has turned extremely xenophobic in recent years. Indian, Chinese, Asian, Japanese, we've got to tariff them, we got to stop them, we got to prevent them from coming in. But if they're going to Harvard, or they can get into Harvard, would you want them to have the race-based quota? Maybe now the right is like, we want the race-based quotas back, in a bit of irony. If the Asians are taking them out, the whites. UNC Chapel Hill's admission practices admitted to using, quote, soft racial preferences. It's not a hard R, it's a soft R. Using soft racial preferences masked under what they called holistic review. Translation, race was still in the room, they just changed its outfit, right? Soft choices, not hard decisions. Like, we don't do it explicitly, we do it implicitly. proxies for race, zip code, family income, essay prompts that, quote, signal background. In other words, they weren't going in and saying, oh, well, you're African American, we're going to give you a spot. They were going in and saying, oh, you're from East St. Louis, you get the spot. You're from that zip code. Good morning, Evan Rowan. Relaxing McGroin, Cecilia H. How you doing? John and KC. Cecilia, Steph and I were talking about you this weekend. Hope you're well. Legacy and donor preferences, often untouched in these debates, but quietly, these preferences will favor the wealthy, connected, and disproportionately wide applicants, proving the fight wasn't about race, but also about who the system serves. Right? So you get the legacy and the donor preferences, all of those students, and then you get the minority hires that they bring in there. So it's this whole engineered system of white American waspy elites who then bring in all of these people from overseas and then choose certain ones based on race and dynamics of the social. They're choosing the racial ecosystem for themselves. It's Joe Biden's racial jungle. Everybody remember when Joe Biden said that? Good morning, everyone. Use ACIAL preferences. No hard R. Thank you very much, Arvol. We appreciate you, brother. All right. So now some of my liberty-minded audience might bristle on this topic, right? Isn't this just more government paperwork? The DOE having to check up on all of these schools to make sure that they're following the rules. And normally I would be leading the charge against having the government do more things. But here's the difference. This isn't about growing the state's power over you. It's about forcing powerful and unaccountable institutions to show their cards, right? Think about this like a poker game. If you're an honest player, you're welcome. You'd welcome somebody watching the deal, right? If you're a cheat, you scream about privacy and process and trust. And these universities have been stacking the deck for decades. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? This isn't just about who gets into Harvard or UNC, right? It's about the kind of country that we're going to be in 20 years, because the people funneled through these institutions, they become the judges, the CEOs, and the political strategists that shape the future of this nation. If you rig the admissions process on the front end, you rig the leadership of the nation on the back end. And meritocracy, that is a terrifying word to the ruling class, because if we judged only on performance, many of the elites who are preaching about equity from their marble towers wouldn't have a job. They wouldn't get into universities like Harvard or UNC, right? They'd be back in the mailroom wondering where it all went wrong. Think about all of the idiots that you know of that are part of the ruling class of this country that got there because they had the right connections, they knew the right people, they managed to get through the race-based admissions process. They're the ones who will become your rulers in the end. I know it's rare I get to say this, but the Department of Education is right to do this for three reasons. One, accountability. You can't fix something if you can't measure it. If we demand proof that these educational institutions are following the law, then we'll have the transparency that we deserve as a nation. Number two, if we let universities self-police on something that's politically as loaded as race and admissions, we're basically saying that the rules only apply when you feel like it. So how about some legal equity when it comes to obeying the law for these institutions, right? Every time a student, and three, public trust. Every time a student gets in for reasons unrelated to merit, somebody else is robbed of their opportunity. When they take that spot, somebody else can't have it. Educational institutions are zero-sum games. If you get the spot, somebody else doesn't. There is very little faith in the university system now in the United States. And when the public stops trusting our educational system, the whole nation suffers. America is suffering because our education system has put us far, far behind in international competition. This isn't the first time that institutions have fought to keep rules in the shadows. This happened back in the 1880s, the civil service reforms, when merit-based hiring replaced patronage. Entrenched political machines at the time fought tooth and nail to keep their grips on jobs. And then desegregation in the 1960s. Many schools claimed compliance with Brown versus the Board of Education, then began quietly manipulating zoning lines and admissions criteria to keep the racial balance that they wanted. It was the same playbook, different decade. So let me throw this to you because I want the chat and I want the Discord hopefully buzzing. It's been nice to see everybody hanging out when we're not live in the new Discords that we set up a couple weeks ago. That's really been popping off. It's great. So first question for you guys. Do you believe universities can be trusted to self-police on race-based admissions? Do you think that the Department of Education is overstepping here? Should any institution that receives public funding be required to prove compliance with the law? And then the third question for you all, if the DOE finds violations, what do you think the penalty should be? Should there be a financial penalty, or should they go as far as pulling accreditation? Would love to hear your thoughts on that. You can send us a text at the phone number that you can see at the bottom of my video cam over there on the live stream, 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Our friend Cecilia wants to know, how do I get invited to the Discord? Well, you don't even need an invite. You can just join if you open up the comments in the show today, or excuse me, not the comments, but the video description. At the very top right there, it says you can vote on our Dark Arts bonus content class today. Should we raise $100 by the end of the show? The link right there that's in the video description will take you to our Discord channel. You can open it up and you'll be able to vote on today's class. And of course, the class will go live if we manage to raise $100 by the end of the show. We are at $0 raised towards the $75 and $100 goals. Y2 Joe in the chat says UNC also had the academic scandal where they got put on academic probation and came close to losing their SACS accreditation. This doesn't surprise me. I don't trust Ivy Leagues as far as I can throw them, says Quest Fanning. Relaxing McGroin says no one should self-police. No money if you do not comply. That's how it works. And I never have solutions for problems. I just complain like a lib. For problems, I'm guessing I just complain like a lib. Thank you for relaxing McGroin. McGroin is very relaxed. If you haven't clicked that like button yet, please do so. We'd love to have you be a regular guest. If you click the follow button, that will give you a notification whenever we go live. So why should libertarians care about this? Some of my libertarian brothers and sisters are going to argue, and rightly, that government can't be trusted to enforce fairness without eventually abusing that power. I get it. But here's the truth. Power exists, whether we like it or not. And if you don't wield it against those who use it unjustly, you hand them free rein to keep abusing it. I mean, you can be a purist about the size of government, but if you ignore the ways that private institutions exercise power with zero accountability, you're letting tyranny thrive under a different name. Thank you to Quest. He donated $2, said, prison for those who have violated civil rights. That's the only way to inform the future behavior of others. Love it. Amy J.E., she made it. So I'm not cheering for the Department of Education as a whole. It's about recognizing that for once, the club that they've been swinging at the wrong targets is hitting something that deserves it. I mean, if the ivory towers feel fear right now, it's because they're seeing that their moral monopoly on our society is slipping. And they know that if this light shines for too long, then the whole game changes. So saddle up, let them prove it. You know, if they're not, tear off the fig leaf and let the world see. Right? Because liberty isn't just about freedom from Washington. It's about freedom from the quiet tyrannies hiding behind campus gates. Can I get an amen? Frickety says, be a purist on the rule of law along with the size of government. There we go. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. It's nice to see everybody over there. I've got the live chat pulled up on the screen. It's nice to see all those names and faces. Pinned in the Rumble chat, you will find a link to the Discord to help you to find your way over to the poll today. It looks as if we've got 2 votes for the Triton of Tolerance and 1 for the Leviathan of Licensing. As I'd said, our resident professor from the deep, visiting us now from the Marianas Trench, Professor Glub, our Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher today, standing by, ready to teach. Should we need him? Should we require a lesson on either the Triton of Tolerance or the Leviathan of Licensing? So the Triton of Tolerance is about how tolerance is used to silence dissent, and the Dark Arts class, Leviathan of Licensing, how work permits crush opportunity. So you get to vote on either one of those, and make sure you do so over the Discord in the chat. It says it shows no text channel when you click the link. You know, if there is a permanent link, and I will drop it in the chat right now. What do you say, Cecilia? Just for you, even while I'm live. That's how good I am. Hell yes. Pat yourself in the back, AP. There you go. Okay, guys. So I know some of you guys had heard last week that we got a new sponsor on the Wake Up America show, and here it is. I'm excited to share with you. You guys know that I'm a big fan of Argentina's President Javier Milei, the guy who's been chainsawing government bloat like it's his favorite hobby. I know it would be mine. If you guys love seeing that kind of freedom in action, then you've got to check out the new Expat Money Online Summit. And it's hosted by this gentleman named Mikkel Thorup. He's one of the sharpest minds in the expat world and a fellow admirer of what Milei is doing. This year's summit is all about Latin America. And I'm talking about the real Latin America, where opportunity is booming while the rest of the world is snoozing. You'll learn how to get a second residency or passport, how to legally cut your taxes, how to buy real estate that isn't in a suburb of Washington, D.C., and how to set up offshore banking, something I've been really thinking about a lot lately. Plus, you'll get the inside scoop on opportunities from Argentina to Panama that the average American never even heard of. I'm actually even going to be on one of the VIP panels talking about Trump's plans for Latin America and what that means for your freedom, your money, and your future. So, and here's the kicker about all this. I'm so excited. It's free. All right. All you got to do to sign up is go to expatmoneysummit.com. expatmoneysummit.com. You get a free ticket. And if you want the VIP experience, which I highly recommend, use the code Austin for 20% off. That's expatmoneysummit.com. expatmoneysummit.com. Again, use the code Austin and you'll get 20% off the VIP package. And I will be there. You don't have to pay anything. It's totally free if you want, but they do have a VIP package and you get a 20% discount if you use the name Austin. And then it shows that, hey, Austin, your advertising is effective. It's Austin, AUSTIN, by the way, expatmoneysummit.com. Let's do it. Pin 2, 3, 4. Who do we appreciate? Let's talk about power, because this is what this is really about, this next topic. Donald Trump is considering reclassifying marijuana under federal law, moving it from the legal dungeon of Schedule 1, where it's been rotting alongside heroin, to the more reasonable Schedule 3, next to Tylenol and codeine. Now, I know I can hear you guys in the audience. I can hear the split. Some of you are nodding your heads because you understand liberty. Some of you are tightening your grip on the armrest because you've been conditioned for decades to believe that marijuana is the devil's lettuce, the slippery slope to jazz, communism, and chaos. No, God, it's...
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
So here's the thing. I'm not a marijuana guy, right? I've never been in a garage with Pink Floyd or painting peace signs on my van and demolishing an entire family-sized pack of Oreos. But I am a liberty guy, okay? And the reality is, liberty is dangerous, and it's supposed to be dangerous. If it's not dangerous, it's not liberty. It's permission. Here's the cold facts. Schedule 1 definition means no accepted medical use It means that it has a high potential for abuse. And some current examples of Schedule A drugs would be things like heroin or LSD or ecstasy. Y2Joe in the chat says, I crushed a pack of Oreos yesterday. See, you don't need marijuana to crush some cookies. Marijuana and its derivatives have documented efficacy for chronic pain, chemo-related nausea, epilepsy, and other conditions. Some of them have been approved by the FDA, like Marinol or I don't know how to pronounce this. Epidiolex, not quite sure. I'm not taking medical marijuana. Unfolding Joker says mushroom microdosing is a great option. Well, sir, you're in the right place. You need to meet our resident mushroom man. Drew Van Runkle is like floating now from the ether right in your direction, Unfolding Joker. Cannabis businesses under this change, if Trump makes this change, would no longer be barred by IRS Code 280E from deducting ordinary expenses, making legal markets more competitive and less reliant on cash. Law enforcement savings would be significant. Reclassification would reduce low-level marijuana prosecutions, freeing up law enforcement resources. And according to a public opinion poll from Gallup in 2024, 70% of Americans support legalization, including majorities of independents, Democrats, and an increasing share of Republicans. Come on, Republicans. Now, here's why I back this move. Because many of you already understand my philosophical core, being liberty. But, the alternative to liberty is control. And control always metastasizes. Once you grant the state the authority to punish peaceful adults for what they put in their own bodies, you guys, you've built the scaffold they'll use to hang the next freedom that they care about. So first they come for the plant, and you say nothing because you don't use it. But once they've established the president that possession of something that they've deemed dangerous is reason enough to strip you of your rights, guess what's next? They want the guns of the cannabis users. And then once the linkage is made, they'll say anyone who uses marijuana is too impaired to have their Second Amendment rights. So in other words, if you decide to use this substance, which is legal in many states, including Missouri, you will become a felon. You will lose your rights to defend yourself despite having committed no aggressive, violent crime on any other citizen. And there are conservatives online right now, many of whom beat their chests about the Second Amendment, openly calling for more marijuana bans. What do you think they're going to do, idiot? They're going to take the guns, right? They want more penalties. They want more criminalization, and they can't see the trap that they're building. Or maybe they do, and maybe they just don't care. But if you're cheering for the state to come after cannabis users, you're cheering for a future where the state can disarm them with the stroke of a pen. And that's not theory. It's already happened in multiple states that have legalized marijuana but maintained firearms restrictions for users. Liberty is not a buffet. You don't get to load your plate with the freedoms you like and then leave the rest for the trash. You can't say government has no right to tell me what gun I can own, then turn around and cheer when your neighbor tells you what plant, he can grow in his garden. Right? That's not liberty. That's just selective freedom. And selective freedom is no freedom at all. Here's a history lesson. Federal marijuana prohibition has never been about public health. In the 1930s, Harry Anslinger, name you might be familiar with, maybe you're not, he was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, used racism and fear-mongering to push the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. His propaganda linked marijuana to reefer-crazed Negroes, and degenerate Mexicans, claiming it drove them to violent crime. It was a political move dressed, of course, as a moral concern. Fast forward to the 1970s, Richard Nixon and his own aide, John Ehrlichman, admitted that the war on drugs was designed to target the administration's political enemies, anti-war leftists and black Americans. Criminalizing marijuana allowed the government to arrest, search, and surveil those groups without directly admitting that it was just because of their political bias. So here's why the reclassification thing is good politics. Trump, and I say this as somebody who agrees with them on a lot of things, I think he really understands the optics here. Right? Public opinion has shifted so far that opposing marijuana reform now looks like being opposed to even having seatbelts in cars or electricity. Right? Among younger voters, I mean, this is a generational wedge issue. Supporting reclassification doesn't make legal sense. It neutralizes a major Democratic talking point, and it appeals to opponents without alienating most Republicans. Critics say that legalizing or reclassifying sends the wrong message to kids. My answer is, you know what sends the wrong message? Is locking someone in a cage for possessing a plant while giving violent criminals sweetheart plea deals. Because your prisons are full of nonviolent offenders. And that tells kids that the law is arbitrary, hypocritical, and rigged. And now some people claim that marijuana is dangerous. Sure. So is alcohol. So is skiing. So is deep frying a turkey. The question isn't it dangerous, but does the government justify does the danger justify the government control? And here the answer is no. We've raised $50 towards the $75 and $100 bonus goal. Actually, it's like 52 or 3 because of Quest Fanning. Thank you, Quest. You the man. We're glad and thankful to have Quest Fanning here helping us on the Wake Up America show. Very, very grateful. Yes, we've raised $52 today. So keep an eye out for those Rumble Rants, guys. And make sure that you visit the For Liberty shop this morning. So here's 3 questions for you guys. First question, should any adult in America face criminal penalties for using a substance that is safer than alcohol? Should people who use marijuana lose their right to own a firearm? And then 3, how do you reconcile claiming to defend liberty while criminalizing peaceful behavior? So from a purely strategic standpoint, denying your opponent an issue that they can bludgeon you with is smart politics. Keeping the government out of private, peaceful behavior removes a tool from the state's arsenal, which is a tool that they've used for decades to target their enemies. And the wise ruler avoids creating enemies unnecessarily, but he also removes the weapons from those who already hate him. Here, reclassification removes one of the state's favorite weapons for crushing dissent and seizing our property. So here's my final word on this topic. Liberty means people will make mistakes, and it's their right to make mistakes. I mean, you can scowl at the guy in the tie-dye hoodie, but if you cheer when the state kicks down his door, don't be surprised when they find a reason to come for you next. Reclassify it, deschedule it, and let's stop acting like it's 1937. So this is where I land. Liberty is a risk worth taking, even when it's messy. If we can trust people with the power to vote or to run for office, to serve in a jury, we can trust them to decide for themselves whether they want to use marijuana, as long as they respect the right of everyone else around them. Couple of things on my plate this morning I wanted to share with you. Our book, Grover the Note President, is #1 in new releases for political biographies. We're actually beating out Zoran Mandani. If you go to Amazon and you check out new releases, Zoran Mandani apparently has a biography out for kids. They're trying to fight for your kids' minds early. They want to get your kids thinking Zoran Mandani is a great guy that should be emulated. Well, I'm here to share with you a little bit of counter disinformation. That's Grover the Note President, available at Amazon. If you're at the Grift Shop at thegriftshop.com, click the link. It'll take you to our book, Grover the Note President, and you can see that we've got copies available. We also have it on Kindle Unlimited. It's free, or you can get it on Kindle for $9.99. If you guys would like to see its Prime 2-day shipping, paperbacks $14.99. Grab a copy, share it with the kids that you know in your life. And you will be glad that you did. It's a great way to introduce your kids to liberty ideals. And again, we are trying to beat Zoran Mamdani over there. We've got a new product over at the For Liberty shop. Do you have great genes? We can unlock this bonus content immediately if somebody decided to buy our brand new denim jacket. Comes in black or comes in classic blue. Ooh, she's got great jeans. She's no Sydney Sweeney. Our Abolish the ATF denim jackets are available now in shop. They're called Abolish the ATF Second Amendment denim jackets with a Gadsden snake sleeve. You can choose either in black denim or classic denim, a myriad of sizes. Not all sizes are in stock right now, but if it's not, just let me know and we can put it in for a reminder when we do get them in stock. The front of the denim jacket says Abolish the ATF, and the back has crisscrossed embroidered AR-15s, which is honestly kind of badass. And again, you can choose from two different types of denim. The front says Abolish the ATF, and then on the sleeve, I put a little extra down there. You've got a nice little Don't Tread on Me Gadsden snake on the right sleeve. Amy says, stop making stuff I want but don't need. You need it. There is no other denim jacket like this in the entire world because I designed it, and it's exclusively available at forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. If you went to the shop right now and you bought this jacket, Amy, it would be there soon, and we would unlock today's Defense Against the Dark Arts class. Amy. There you go. So my guest this coming up hour, Jon Miltimore, we're going to talk to him. We're going to have a nice debate today. We're going to tackle one of the biggest moral and strategic questions of the 20th century, the decision to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And I believe that it was the right call to end the war and to save lives. Jon disagrees, so get ready for a respectful, fact-heavy debate that's going to challenge assumptions on both sides. Stephanie and I... when we took our dream trip to Japan a couple of years ago, we did the whole ride the bullet train from the mid-Japan, Tokyo region, all the way down to Hiroshima. That was the farthest south that we got. And for me, partly this trip was a history tour because of my interest in World War II. Somebody asked yesterday, how much do you know about the Japanese army of World War II? And I was like, a lot. And the Navy, too. The Imperial War Museum was the first stop that we made on our tourism. And Hiroshima was one of the final stops that we took. We went to the Museum of the Bomb. We went through the exhibits where they talk about the decision and the planning in deciding to drop the atomic bomb. There were some protesters outside that it was a Japanese woman who was talking about the horror of the bomb as we stood next to the dome of the cracked dome from the dropping of the bomb that day. An absolutely horrific act that ended up stopping the prolonging of the war and probably saving up to 1 million American lives that may have died on the beaches, and countless millions of Japanese who absolutely would have died on the beaches. There were photographs of women who were being trained to fight with, I think they're called punji sticks. Essentially, they were taking civilians and preparing them for the invasion and giving them wooden spears to go and fight the Americans on the beaches. It would have been a bloody, terrible demonstration. And Mighty Megatron says, don't think for a second if Japan or Germany had the technology that they wouldn't have used it on us. Stop the stupidity. Very true. And ending the war before Russia could come in, also an important point. But of course, many of these points will have a chance to be rebutted when Jon Miltimore joins us live this morning at 8 a.m. Central Time here on the Wake Up America show. You don't want to miss a single second. I got to take a quick little break so I can drink some water. And I will be right back. Keep unlocking that bonus content. We'll be back in like 2 shakes of a lamb's tail on the Wake Up America show's For Liberty Network.
Here at Alligator Alcatraz, the fence keeps them in. But slip up and you're on my plate.
Looks like breakfast is making a run for it. We got 3 hot meals trying to check out early from Alligator Alcatraz.
They can splash, they can sprint, but there's no escaping Alligator Alcatraz. Caught 2.
The third? Huh.
The swamp's got its own way of catching runaways.
Mama was wrong. Gators don't need toothbrushes. Just an honest job making America great again.
This summer isn't about sunscreen and safe spaces. It's about liberty, laughs, and looking like a red, white, and righteous badass. Welcome to the Summer of Freedom collection. Beach towels bold enough to trigger a liberal arts professor. Tank tops louder than a 4th of July fireworks finale. And mugs that scream, "Don't tread on my caffeine." Whether you're storming the sandbar or just grilling like George Washington with a Bluetooth speaker, this is the gear that lets everyone know. You're not here to play woke. You're here to play cornhole with conviction. So crack open a cold one, fire up the freedom, and rock the merch that makes communists cry. The Summer of Freedom is here. And it's absolutely unapologetic. Patriots, listen up. The sun's out, the shades are on, and the Gulf of America is wide open for business. This summer, don't show up to the beach looking like a landlocked liberal. Gear up with the Gulf of America collection. Towels, tumblers, shirts, hats, fanny packs, because nothing says freedom like cannonballing into liberty with style. Whether you're grilling burgers, catching waves, or just flexing on social media, do it draped in stars, stripes, and pure American greatness. The Gulf of America isn't just a place, it's a lifestyle. Hit forlibertyshop.com and roll into summer like the Founding Fathers just handed you the keys to the coast. Beaches, BBQs, and bald eagles approved. You should too. Head over to forlibertyshop.com and get your Gulf of America gear. Summer is coming fast. That's forlibertyshop.com. Imagine bringing George Washington back to life. Just to explain that in 2025, men can get pregnant, waving an American flag might offend someone, and our government is $34 trillion in debt. But that's not all, George. We have drag queen story hour for toddlers, pronouns are mandatory, and Harvard can't define woman. Oh. And we send billions to Ukraine but can't fix potholes in Ohio. You know, just normal modern empire stuff. I'm sure he'd be totally cool with it. Right after he finishes reloading. He didn't cross the Delaware for this nonsense, but you can carry on the fight with gear that would have made King George cry. Shop bold, shop free, shop forlibertyshop.com. Picture this. It's 1776. Thomas Jefferson is hunched over his desk at Monticello, ink-stained fingers, writing the most radical document in human history. Do you really think he was sipping Starbucks? No. He was drinking something bold, something black, something brewed strong enough to fuel a revolution. That's the spirit behind Founding Flavors, our signature line of liberty-fueled coffee. No soy froth, no climate guilt, no corporate slogans. Just real coffee, inspired by the men who wrote freedom into existence. Every cup is a quiet protest. Against mediocrity, against tyranny, against bad coffee. So this morning, skip the globalist brew. Grab something worthy of a free man's sunrise. Founding Flavors. Now brewing at forlibertyshop.com. Legend has it, back in 1773, a band of angry, overtaxed patriots stormed a British ship, found the king's favorite tea, and said, "This would taste better without the tyranny." Then they tossed it overboard. Fast forward to today. That revolutionary spirit lives on in Boston Harbor Black, the boldest brew in the For Libert tea lineup. It's dark, it's smooth, it's unapologetically American, just like the folks who drink it. Whether you're sweetening it up on the front porch or drinking it straight like a Minuteman before battle, this isn't tea for royalty. It's tea for rebels. No fake flavors, no corporate slogans, just a cold glass of Don't Tread on Me in liquid form. So skip the woke iced tea aisle and stock up on Boston Harbor Black at 4libertyshop.com. Because when the heat's rising, the least you can do is drink like a patriot. Look, not all t-shirts are created equal.
Something that I'm sure you have seen, a Gallup poll. Did you see this Gallup poll?
Yep.
And what the Gallup poll found was that you are one of the most widely admired Americans. And I believe you're only second to the Pope.
You want me to declare my candidacy for Pope? Is that what you're asking?
I don't think that you're eligible for a lot of reasons.
Then I won't do that.
I watched you tonight. I've watched you for a very, very long time. You're obviously still full of vigor and intensity for the things that you're.
The simpering. Ugh. I'm sorry, what? How you doing, Y2 Joe? We're almost to our first phase of the bonus content lot, guys. Thank you so much. It's very nice. Dad Bod Baboon, he's doing his part. He got his electric elixir this weekend. D-freaking-licious. Get yours at the 4 Liberty Shop. Thank you, Dad Bod. And you're welcome. I'm really proud of my coffee over there at the shop. All right, let's talk about something, speaking of the shop, that terrifies the average person and electrifies the ambitious. Walking away from the so-called safe path. Millionaire entrepreneur Simon Squibb, a guy who went from homeless teenager to building and selling companies, is telling young people flat out, quit your job. Now, before you roll your eyes and dismiss this as another millionaire preaching from the penthouse balcony, you have to understand the weight behind his words here. This is a man who, at 15 years old, watched his father die of a heart attack right in front of him. Within 8 minutes, his life went from stable to chaos. He had no inheritance, no safety net, just grief, and 8 weeks of sleeping in stairwells, park benches, and in phone boxes in London. And it was in that crucible, not in a classroom, the Department of Education, but it was in the crucible of having to stand up and defend himself and fight for his liberty. He walked past a big house one day, saw the messy garden, and thought, maybe they'll pay me to clean it. He knocked, and they said yes, and that was the first domino. Not just his first paycheck, but his first realization that he could create opportunity instead of waiting for someone to hand it to him. And that is the difference between the worker mindset and the owner mindset. The worker waits for the fish. The owner builds the pond. And here's why this hits home for me. I mean, this isn't an abstract theory for me. I didn't get here building shows, running businesses, launching networks by dutifully following the whole go to school, get the job, work for 40 years and retire playbook. If I'd done that, you would have never heard of me. There'd be no Wake Up America show. But when I walked away from a traditional career to run my own thing, I had critics, doubters, armchair advisors warning me that I was committing product. They're marketed as essential, whether or not you actually need them, right? Always. The same goes for the safe job, right? It's a contract where you rent your time, your energy, and your creative potential to somebody else's vision in exchange for the illusion of security. And the people who are telling you that this is the only safe way, that's the only reason they're telling you that is because they've never tested the alternative. All right, look around. Skyrocketing living costs, stagnant wages, and housing prices that make the American dream look like a relic in a museum. Even the most credentialed, most obedient players in this system are still struggling to get ahead. And if the safe path is failing the obedient, then what's the point of playing by the rules? Squibb's point is simple. If you're in a job that doesn't align with your values or your dreams, leave. Not recklessly, not tomorrow morning without a plan, but stop treating the thing that drains you as if it's your oxygen supply. If you are going to start a boring business, start knocking on neighbors' doors on the weekends and ask them if you could clean their gutters, or after work, or whenever you have a chance. You'll have to give up football, Friday night football, or you'd have to give up some other thing. It's a trade-off to get started to build your dreams. The For Liberty shop started, for those of you who remember, way back before I ever left radio days. The Libertarian Republic, my news blog from way back in 2013, that started way before I ever left my cushy 6-figure job on Capitol Hill that I was working for a brief period. And I took more than half of a pay cut to go and to take a risk and to go and work for myself. Squib, the guy who wrote this piece talking about why you should quit your job, says anyone with a phone in their hand can build a new life. And it's true. Today, your phone is a printing press. It's a broadcast tower. It's a storefront. It's a studio. It's a bank. And you could launch an idea to the world in seconds. I'm doing it daily here. You can find customers in minutes, and I'm going to teach you how to do things like that with my upcoming course on how to use AI. And you can monetize your skills without asking for permission. Hell, you can get cryptocurrency and go play in a casino if you want to in this world. It's all possible. Not that I would ever do that. You don't need a gatekeeper to approve you, is the message here, right? And this is the part that most people miss. Clarity doesn't come from waiting until you feel ready. It comes from action. Knock on the door, pitch the idea, launch the page. You'll find out what works and what doesn't. And then that feedback loop will teach you more than any degree. But here's the dark side, and there's always a dark side. Everything's a trade-off. You will face rejection. You will fail. You will run into walls. And that is where most people break, because they've been trained to see rejection as humiliation instead of currency. In the entrepreneurial game, rejection is the tuition that you pay. You pay it, you learn, and then you just keep moving. Most people don't quit their jobs because they're too comfortable. Most people don't quit their jobs because they're too comfortable. They quit because they've been pushed into a crisis. Layoffs, burnout, divorce. But Squib's mission is to get you to move before the crisis comes. Right? I'm not telling you to walk into your boss's office today, throw your security badge on the desk and yell, "I'm free," and then start building your exit. I'm saying start building your exit ramp now. Right? That's exactly how I moved from working within other people's media machines to running my own. And while I was still inside, I built my own brand, my own audience, my own infrastructure. So when the day came to step out, I wasn't jumping out into an empty void. I was stepping into a runway that I had already built. Power respects power. Employers, industries, and markets respect the person who can walk away more than the one who can't. When you have your own pond, you don't fear losing access to someone else's. If you want true leverage in life, you have to be willing to leave the table. And you can only leave the table if you set your own. If you wake up every morning dragging yourself toward a paycheck you resent, you don't have a job, you have a sentence. And the purpose of life isn't to retire with a pile of money. It's to wake up excited about what you get to do that day. If you don't have that, start building it. All right, your first step doesn't have to be quitting tomorrow. It can be one door knocked on, one side hustle started, one skill launched into the marketplace. That's how you start building a life where you call the shots. And the day you hand in that resignation letter, you're going to know you're not running away from something. You're running towards something that's yours. All right. If you guys want to get involved with what we're doing over here at the For Liberty Network, we are now hiring another new associate. We've posted the job listing, but for those who already know and who are listening right now, we're looking for someone who can help us with merchandising, working the shop. Things are just getting too big to handle. And you know what happens when you start? One of the most important skills you can learn as an entrepreneur is how to delegate, delegating of tasks. So if you know someone who is bright, who is energetic, who is a digital native that understands how markets work and who's interested in getting into the nitty-gritty of how to run online stores, then guys, we are looking for you right now. So send me an email to austin@stonegatellc.com. That's austin@stonegatellc.com. And hit me up with a resume and a little bit about yourself. I'd love to hear from those who might be interested in getting involved and helping us out with the business. It's me, it's Steffi, it's Brad Beckman, it's Daniela Pensack, it's Brian Piotr, and it's the king of all libertarians, and it could be you. It could be you. We'll be right back. You guys just unlocked the bonus content. We're like it literally is at, I think exactly $75. Yeah. We've unlocked that bonus content. Enjoy our little mini documentary about the Second Amendment. We'll be right back with Jon Miltimore with a debate on Hiroshima. $25 more, and you unlock the defense against the dark arts class. We'll be right back.
Recently, while touting gun seizures in a city that has some of the most authoritarian gun laws in the United States, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch lamented, "The number of illegal guns that we've seen used in New York City has exploded since 3D technology has come about." She's not alone. Homemade guns are increasingly sophisticated and available almost everywhere. That's a good thing. American dedication to privately owned weapons alarms observers from more restrictive countries. Much to the amusement of many Americans, it should be noted, whose ancestors fled those places in search of greater freedom, and found it in part in the ability to arm themselves and to generally flip the bird to government. That means that from the foundation of the U.S., privately owned weapons and their protection by the Second Amendment have had a strong ideological component. Now, innovators around the world are embracing private arms as expressions of liberty and creating simple designs that can be built in home workshops with commonly available tools and parts. Critics argue that 3D printed DIY firearms and their enthusiasts are spreading libertarianism around the world. Let's hope they're right. Summarizing events at June's Monericon conference in Prague, an annual meeting devoted to privacy-enhancing technologies and distributed systems, security expert Zoltan Firedi described a presentation by the pseudonymous Zay Karioka, designer of the recently unveiled Urutau, a 9mm select-fire firearm designed to be constructed with a 3D printer and components purchased at any hardware store. Rather than focus on his creation, Zay Karioka instead championed 3D printed firearms as companions to cryptocurrency in challenging the power and reach of governments. His speech blurred the lines between technology, ideology, and extreme libertarian politics, commented Firedi. He added of the speaker's message, "Just as the freedom to transact via cryptocurrency is now seen as a fundamental human right, so too should be the right to bear arms, worldwide." To that end, Zay Karioka includes with his freely downloadable Urutau designs a document co-authored with fellow weapons designer Ryan Smith. Dubbed the New Second Amendment, the authors state their deep conviction that the unlimited right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental human right. To that end, they make it their objective that a governing entity must find it impractical or impossible to overcomplicate or prevent the production of a privately manufacturable weapon. Zay Karioka appears to have succeeded. In January, with Yannick Veilleux-Lepage of the Institute of Security and Global Affairs at Leiden University, Firedi described the Urutau as much easier to build than the FGC-9, a semi-automatic 9mm firearm primarily constructed with 3D printed parts and simple tools. They added that the assembly instructions for the Urutau are exceptionally well designed. The FGC-9, Fuck Gun Control 9mm, was designed by Jacob Duigu, a former German soldier who went by the pseudonym J. Stark before he died under mysterious circumstances after being questioned by German police. It was refined by an American identified by the New York Times as licensed firearms manufacturer John Ehrlich. In a documentary about Europe's underground DIY weapons movement, a masked Duigu said that to bear firearms is a human right, and that people need to have the same force on the individual level as the executive force of the government entity that is ruling over them. This American brand of libertarianism has historically been a tough sell in many other parts of the world. Even if some people believed it in theory, strict laws made buying a gun so difficult that the ideology was almost beside the point, wrote Lizzie Dearden and Thomas Gibbons Neff of the Times. The FGC-9 is changing that. The FGC-9 quickly became globally popular. In 2022, France 24 reported the FGC-9 to be in wide use by rebels in Myanmar, fighting that country's brutal government. They use the DIY guns for training, for hit-and-run missions, and to fill in the gaps in supplies of commercially produced arms. The Urutau is designed as a simpler-to-produce successor to the FGC-9. It's intended to make restrictions even more difficult for governments to impose. And what's interesting is that both it and the FGC-9 were designed by non-Americans who embraced the idea that individuals should be put on an even footing with government enforcers. That's a major shift for a movement that began when Cody Wilson, a former law student from Austin, Texas, created the first 3D printed single-shot pistol in 2013. That gun, dubbed the Liberator, was also intended to enhance freedom and limit the reach of government. The movement and the ideology behind it have found fertile ground outside the United States. Scofflaw as a means to expand liberty isn't limited to the field of firearms, of course. Zay Carioca gave his presentation at a conference where the main focus was on cryptocurrency and encryption, two technological means for putting human activity beyond state control. Marijuana is currently legal for recreational use in roughly half of U.S. states, but it remains illegal at the federal level. Those states choose to ignore federal law under pressure from residents who have long enjoyed the stuff with little concern for its legal status. Decades ago, the movement to legalize homosexuality got its jumpstart from the Stonewall Uprising. In 1969, gays and lesbians streamed into the streets of New York City to violently confront police after the latest in a series of raids on the Stonewall Inn, a popular bar. And, perhaps most famously, Prohibition ended in the U.S., largely because mass defiance, moonshiners, and bootleggers made enforcement impossible. It makes sense that people from countries with restrictive firearms would take the lead in a movement that seeks to make those laws unenforceable. Americans may have cultivated the ideology and offered inspiration, but the movement picks up support where it's most needed. That's not to say the U.S. is immune to gun banners. As mentioned above, New York City has authoritarian laws, as do other jurisdictions. Zay Carioca and Ryan Smith are clear that their new Second Amendment is for Americans too. Should the government and its laws become more restrictive? Legal constraints like the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution are finite, vulnerable to ignorance, and have national boundaries. But our guiding principle does not, they wrote. Americans delivered a libertarian DIY firearms movement to the world. The world may help preserve it.
Good morning, rise in freedom. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and that's on the 4 Liberty Network. We're glad and thankful to have you here. We appreciate all of our viewers who are joining us live. Make sure you click the like button, and if today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. If you click the follow button underneath the video over on Rumble, you'll get notifications whenever we go live. The Wake Up America show you're watching now is one of 4 live shows that the 4 Liberty Network produces. Last Friday night, we had an absolute blast on the Freedom Arcade. Camellia Petersen was there. People were drinking. It got weird. If you are subbed to this channel, then you guys are absolutely going to love Freedom Arcade. So make sure that you join us on Friday nights for that. Mighty Megatron dropped a couple bucks in the tip jar. It says, AP Daniela was on some progressive far-right conservative debate. Have you seen the vid? Yes, I did, because we had her on the show, and I think we talked about it like 2 weeks ago or something. I'm not quite sure. But thank you, Mighty Megatron. Go back and check the interviews that I did with Daniela. My guest this hour is Jon Miltimore. He is from the American Institute of Economic Research. He's one of the sharpest minds in journalism today. Jon and I have gone head-to-head on a lot of topics over the years, but always with respect and a shared love of liberty. Today we're marking 80 years since the bombing of Hiroshima. I take the position personally that the dropping of the bomb was justified, that it ended the war swiftly, saved potentially millions of lives, and sent a necessary message to prevent further global catastrophe. Jon takes the opposite tack, and we're going to unpack both sides. Good morning, Jon, and welcome to the show. It's Mondays with Miltimore.
Hey, good morning, AP. How you doing?
All right. Luke Sacker in the chat says, Uncle Milty's here. So I guess you've been upgraded, Jon.
Milton Berle? I can roll with
Milton
that.
Berle, no. Uncle Milty is Milton Friedman, dang it. No, you're Uncle Milty now. Jon, glad to have you here, bud. We were kind of talking about it. Because it's such an interesting subject, we couldn't resist discussing it backstage. You've changed your opinion on over the years. Talk to us a little bit about your thinking on the bomb and how it's changed.
Yeah, for years, the reasons you just spelled out, really did ring true to me. Like Japan started this. Pearl Harbor was a horrible attack that it was an ambush, right? Like it's out of the blue, didn't need to happen. The Japanese fought the war, not just ferociously, but kamikaze attacks. This was a foe who was evil, right? Like the Japanese Empire was evil, and we've all seen the figures. Like if the Marines are going to go in for a land invasion, and amphibious assault. Yeah, to end that, it's going to be a lot of people that die, and it's easy for me to say, like, this is how I thought, like okay. Say don't drop the bomb because you're going to kill women and children. What if I'm one of those soldiers that has to go take one of those positions? We've seen Saving Private Ryan, right? We know what D-Day looked like. Do we want to repeat that? And if we could end the war with one swift stroke, that always seemed like it. It seemed like the option that made sense, even if it was a very ugly option.
Yeah, I said Operation Torch. I meant Operation Downfall. The planned invasion of Japan was estimated between 500,000 to 1 million Americans dead or wounded. 500,000 to 1 million Americans dead or wounded. If it's us or them, and they're an evil empire, John, why not them? Why sacrifice 500,000 to 1 million Americans to die so that for an evil empire? It makes no sense. Just nuke it from orbit.
Yeah, so where my views changed is when I saw what people like Eisenhower and Leahy actually, their opinions on this, where they looked at Japan as a foe that was already defeated, and Eisenhower opposed dropping the bomb. So did Leahy, and they said this is something that didn't need to happen. Like Japan is they're spent. And if you look, Truman himself, following the dropping of these bombs, ordered a survey done. Truman didn't. We've seen him, in movies like how he felt about dropping. The truth is, we don't really know. Truman didn't write a lot about this in his memoirs. Like how he felt privately is a little unclear. I don't think there's no reason to believe he apologized or anything like that. But he did order a survey to see what would have happened in the absence of dropping this. And the U.S. bomb survey themselves said Japan would have surrendered by November 1st, most likely. Even in the absence of dropping a bomb in Hiroshima, even in the absence of Russia entering the war against Japan, this is overlooked in American classrooms a lot. Like, we're very U.S. centric. If you read Japanese historians, they will tell you it was a bigger deal that Russia came into this war against Japan. Don't forget, Russia had signed a non-aggression pact with Japan. They were kind of allies in this struggle against the Western democracies. And Russia flips. They said, nope, we're now going to go against you as well. That was really the straw that broke the camel's back. If you ask Japanese historians, that the game was over then. That Japan recognized, and even here's another piece of this. Even before Hiroshima that bomb is dropped on Little Boy is dropped. Even before Russia flips, Japan was already positioning itself to surrender. Now, what they wanted to do is they wanted to surrender conditionally. Yes. They wanted certain, for Hirohito, like there was great fear that the emperor was going to face a tribunal, that he could be executed for war crimes, things like this. They wanted to prevent that from happening, and which is why they wanted a conditional surrender versus unconditional. The truth is, if you look at the American leaders, like MacArthur and Commander in the Pacific, said they didn't want to do that anyway. Like, there was really no need to drag Hirohito through the mud and put him on a public trial. That wasn't the way this was being approached.
MacArthur knew that he was going to end up the de facto emperor in the end anyway. But
there you go.
But if Japan was defeated, if they were willing to surrender, why didn't they surrender after the first bomb? Why didn't they surrender after the Potsdam Conference when the Allies said it had to be unconditional surrender? And they didn't want to. You say it very clearly. They wanted to surrender, but it had to be a conditional surrender. Well, that's not how surrender works. The surrender works in the fashion of the person who is the victor. And so it doesn't make sense that to say that the Japanese were going to surrender, because if we hadn't dropped those nuclear bombs on them, we could have had a situation even that would have been much worse, not just because of the American loss of lives, but because at the Potsdam Conference, that's where Stalin agreed to send troops to fight Japan. And yeah, okay, you could say you don't, let the Soviets fight them out, but that didn't work well for us when we allowed the Soviets to take Berlin. As a matter of fact, all that did was lead to even more conflict. Imagine a communist Japan. Imagine a situation where the Japanese, instead of becoming the mega, advanced civilization that they've become, imagine that they had become a Soviet state that was another Korea, or a North Korea, John. The world would have less liberty. People would be less free.
Yeah, we're getting into kind of some murky ethical territory, because this is when I'm aware that Russia had its own plans, but if we're saying it was a mercy to drop the nuclear bombs on Japan to prevent, a Russian invasion, those ethics at least are questionable to me. And again,
why is that questionable ethics? I mean, we're literally trying to stop another communist nation from being created.
Because to me, it's very left-wing in the sense that we're justifying a horrible action because it produces a greater good. And to me, when it comes to ethics, I really tend to look at things not on what they are going to achieve, but what they do. And to me, this is something over the years I've really, I don't think there's a name for this philosophy, but I'm very suspicious that when we do evil things because it's going to produce a greater good, I've become suspicious of those things. And when we were jumping on this today, I'm like, oh my! When I first saw that we were going to talk about this, I'm like, oh, this topic has been talked about over and over and over. And then it occurred to me, no, this is an important conversation. Yeah. Because there's a reason that we talk about this, because, we can't take back dropping the bombs on, even if you did think that was a good thing, we can't take that back. But it does show how we're going to approach future conflicts. And what we had here was a situation where we weren't, as bad as Pearl Harbor was, okay? You had 900 men under the sea by the end of the day. It was a horrific attack, but it was a military target. The nuclear bomb does not distinguish between a military target and a civilian target. And in this case, we chose civilian targets.
What bomb does? In 1940s, there was no such thing as a bomb that distinguished.
I understand that.
There's no drone. I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous assertion. Of course it doesn't.
I'm approaching this in a way like as we approach future conflicts, we have to look at this in a way.
Well, then the drones, in some ways, like we should be very glad that we have things like individualized drones. And it used to be now that you would have drones and you'd have to bomb a wedding and kill, maybe 50 to 75 people along with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. But now you don't even have to do that. You can actually send a personal drone, or if we were as advanced as Israel, then we could just give them pagers and let them blow themselves up. Talk about that. That had to have been the most individualized anti-terrorist operation I've ever seen, and still the libertarians weren't happy about it. But
it is a brilliant but terrifying thing when we were going to give people pagers and then blow up people. And again, it wasn't just. Here's the thing with that. I don't want to go down that whole thing. You don't know if that person's driving a car. You don't know if that person's in a bar, right? Like you're having a drink and he's sitting next to other civilians. But there is a smart warfare. Like if we can minimize civilian attacks, I think you and I would agree that's a good thing.
Yeah, sure.
And if we go to Nagasaki, if we go to Hiroshima.
We're talking about Hiroshima. There was no opportunity to do so, and it's not like we're talking about anti-terrorism where it's 75 to 1,000 guys in the deserts in Afghanistan. We're talking about an entire nation, and they still had 4.5 million soldiers that were in the service that could have resisted us, and the citizens and civilians.
They did, but most of you look at all Japanese forces in Korea and in China, they're all cut off, right? Like they can't be supported. This is why the U.S. bombing survey said, like by November 1st, they're spent. Like troops need to be supplied. They need logistics. They need food. They need water. They need all these things. Japan was reaching a point where they couldn't do those things anymore.
But for them, I think that war was going to end. It's all hypothetical. For them, it's all hypothetical.
It is, and this is why in here. I know I told you this before the show. I don't even judge Truman harshly for this. I think Truman was trying to do what was best for the U.S. troops, for the U.S. people, and for his electoral chances. Like, we got to remember that, too. I think there was not appetite at all for a conditional surrender because, the American people wanted unconditional surrender. They remembered Pearl Harbor. They wanted to make Japan pay. I understand those feelings, but I don't want to approach wars that way. And like it's not in my constitution to approach the war that way, that we're going to have retribution. And if you look at a lot of the things written about Hiroshima today, like the LA Times just ran something by Josh Hammer, who's a guy I know a little bit. I think Josh is a smart guy and writes some good things. I did not like the piece where he called dropping the bomb on Hiroshima a moral necessity. And if you look, a lot of his arguments surrounding, they go to Pearl Harbor. And he said it would be a disgrace to not do this because look at what they did to us at Pearl Harbor. He uses that sort of emotive argument to we want retribution.
John, is there any scenario at all where you believe nuclear weapons could be justified, or are they inherently wrong as part of their existence?
I don't want to see them used. I do not want to see nuclear weapons.
So and I think you don't think it could ever be morally justified under any circumstances?
I'm opposed to dropping them, and we know where that goes. Here's why: because we use one, then someone else uses one, and we can take all these.
That's not what happened. You said that. No, you know how it goes. We dropped them, and we're the only people to have dropped them since. It's a powerful argument to suggest that all you had to do was drop them, and now everybody knows not to with us, and it's never been done since.
The game has changed. When we had those, we were the only country that had them. Since then, now there's hundreds,
but nobody's dropped them.
Thousands of them.
You know how it goes, and then you said people. Then you use them. Then
why haven't they
use them? And they haven't.
But why haven't they been used?
Because everybody knows the terror. But what will happen if you do use them? Because we've seen them used, and all you had to do was to use them twice, end the war, and then all of history looks back and says, "Well, you know what? We know that we don't want to see something like that happen again." Sometimes you have to set an example to show the world what you're capable of. If the world wants to destroy you and is going to murder you, the United States was in an existential fight here. If Japan or Germany, do you think that if Japan and Germany had the weapons that they wouldn't have used them on us to level our cities, to completely destroy and obliterate us? Of course they would have.
I believe they would have.
And so,
but I'll go back to.
So when you're against an evil empire, you're not evil for using the tactics that are necessary in order to win and to show all the other bad guys in the world, this is what happens when you mess with the United States of America.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons that we haven't seen them used is because we haven't employed them again since then. That goes away. Once one's used again, guess what happens? Then someone else is going to use them as well. And the fact that that's one of it's an understated reason for opposing nuclear warfare. Once you use them, it's going to increase the likelihood of somebody else using them again. But to go back, I don't judge Truman. I think he was doing he didn't have all the information that we have today. I'd like to think if Truman were alive today and he was presented with some of these things, he might have made a different decision. If he said, yeah, Japan's going to surrender by November 1st, we have really good intel on that. Like we don't have to slaughter 100,000 innocent people. And that's what the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki did. We don't have great data on who died, but we know that it was a majority of them were women and children, just innocent women and children. Most of the men were off fighting, and in excess of 100,000 of them were either evaporated or died shortly after. And to me, that's a very horrifying thing. I do not want to see nuclear weapons ever used again, and we haven't. And that's
nobody
amazing.
Wants to. So I don't think it's a simple. I don't think it's. I want to be careful here about how we frame things, because I don't think anybody wants to see nuclear weapons used. The argument on my side of things is that it's a horrible, terrible thing that I hope never happens again, and I wish it didn't have to happen, but sometimes good men must armor up a Komatsu bulldozer and drive downtown and start destroying the lives of the people who have been destroying your lives. If my neighbor decided to go on if he had been oppressed his whole life, say he'd been bullied by the guy next door, and he finally decided to go out there and lay a beat down on that guy who's been oppressing him, I'm going to sit there and say, oh, well, I got a lot more respect for that guy. Remind me not to mess with him. That's just the law of nature. It's inevitable. Conflict is inevitable on this planet. And my belief is that an armed society is a polite society. I think that applies to nations as well. Armed nations are polite nations. And conflicts in terms of actual human casualties have gone down since World War II. We haven't had a war like World War II since World War II. And I think part of that is the way that war ended. I'll give you the final word, John, and of course, plug anything that you want to plug.
Yeah, no, I'm a realist. I recognize nations are going to fight, that people are going to fight. And I'm a realist. Like, we can't, if we could go back and unlearn the nuclear bomb, I think that would be good. But it's here. And I think we need to hate nuclear weapons like we hate war, or we need to hate them. Remember, Robert E. Lee said, it's a good thing war is so terrible, otherwise we'd grow too fond of it. I think that's how we need to look at nuclear warfare. Like, it's something, I don't even want to entertain scenarios where, oh yeah, we could maybe use one in that situation or this situation. I do not want to ever see these, used again. Could I come up with some scenario, hypothetical one, where you might say you have to? Sure, I probably could. I don't even want to entertain those. These are weapons that we don't want to ever see used again. And that's where I come down. But no, I think this is an important conversation to have today. Like I said, I've been thinking about that for so long. We've talked that out. No, it's a very important conversation today because it's going to determine how we fight future conflicts. And is it just the result we have, or should we take into account, innocents, women and children, civilians? Is there a difference between civilian casualties and military casualties? I think there has to be if we're a civilized people. But no, it's a great topic. I got the final word in. Everybody probably knows by now. Check out my content on Substack, The Take by Jon Miltimore. You'll see some content related to this. I think I just published one a couple days ago, actually, on the bombing of Nagasaki. I talked about, J.R.R. Tolkien. He responded to this, and he was horrified by what he saw. And I think that was one of the things that made me take a second look at it, because I have a high amount of appreciation and respect for Tolkien. And he wasn't excited that the war was over. He was horrified by what humanity had discovered, and he wanted to go back. But that's not the world we live in.
That's right. It's not the world we live in. It's a world where we've used the nukes, where we drew up the post-World War II order, and we made America great again. Hey, John, we appreciate you. We're going to read your Substack over at The Take, and hopefully we'll see you again next Monday for our weekly Monday with Miltimore. You have a good one.
Hey, good seeing you, AP. Have a good week.
Thank you. You too.
You check. I'm sitting there tweeting, bing, bing, bing. You press a button, bing, bing. They all hand you checks, bing, 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 bing. We had our beautiful Marine standing there, bing, 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 bing. In the old days, bing, bong. With the map, bing, bing, bing. Little mouth on him, bing, 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 bing. Bing, 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 they're cleaning up. Fix it up, bing, bing, bing. A 14-point plan, bing, bing, bing. Anthony Weiner, the little bing, bing, bing. Everyone's attacked me, has gone bing. Everyone else, bing. Where have they gone? Bing. Wow. What a tackle. Bing. Playing cards. Bing, bing, bing. Those tunnels. Bing, boom. Right under the toilet. Bing, boom. Right up. Bing. Like a rocket ship, except in the wrong direction. I'd fly over, drop them right on top. Just bing. They want me to use the pump. Because the other one, which I really like better than going bing, bing, bing. It's like puppets. Bing, 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 bong, bong, bing, bing, bing. The bing, bing, bang, bang, boom. I was imitating puppets, and I said, maybe I should.
Bing, bang, bing, bang, bang. We'll be right back. It's Cliff Maloney with an exciting announcement for the Liberty community on the Wake Up America show. Only $25 left to go to unlock the Dark Arts class. You don't want to miss it. Professor Glub Salasin will be joining us live if we hit that bonus content goal. So drop some Rumble rants or visit the Liberty shop. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. with sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama!
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist. Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins.
How radicalized they were by, let's say, the investigations. And again, let's just for the benefit of the doubt say, okay, I get it. But now instead of saying that was so horrible, no one should ever go through it. They're saying that was so horrible. Now we're going to do it to them.
After he insisted, I will end the weaponization. It's really hard to see what is the
turbocharged it.
Right, and he is systematically going after people who either criticize him or oppose him, or have disagreed with him or investigated him. And we will see how many more follow.
Has anybody been more wrong about anything than Jake Tapper? We say wrong, but I mean, at this point, you'd have to say that he was wrong is to suggest that he made a mistake, as if the coverage of Joe Biden, while Tapper has sat in the top spot at CNN for years. I think it's you could say it's lies. Would you say it's lies? I think it's lies. That's what you'd call it, not mistakes. Reporting on the weaponization of government. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show. We're 1 month away from the three-month anniversary of this. Podcasting, merchandising, For Liberty Networkizing. It's been fantastic. We've got 4 shows now here on the For Liberty Network, and it's thanks in large part to the commitments and to the growth that we have had, thanks to people like Cliff Maloney, my next guest, who's joining us here live on the Wake Up America show. Cliff, without your support, the For Liberty Network wouldn't be what it is today. How you doing, bud?
I'm great, Austin. Appreciate you having me.
Glad to have you here. There's so much to talk about, Cliff, but I teased it out, a big announcement that you're going to make today for the Liberty community. So I'll give you the floor for that. And then I got a couple of things that I want to talk to you about political-wise. So go ahead and launch for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So the big announcement, obviously after last year's Pennsylvania Chase effort, where we went out and knocked 510,000 doors, took Trump from 20% against Biden to 34.5% against Harris when it comes to mail-in ballots. The big announcement here on the Wake Up America show is we are back. So the PA Chase relaunched 1 week ago today. And so we've got Airbnbs across Pennsylvania. The idea of an off year in politics is no more. It is a myth. And so my message to all of your viewers, all of your listeners out there, we promised you guys we want permanent infrastructure to protect all of the liberty battles in the key swing state of Pennsylvania. The PA Chase will knock another 500,000 doors this year, and we're going to do the work that nobody else wants to do to make PA the red wall.
We look at the PA Chase as one of the key reasons why Donald Trump is in the White House today. People like yourself and Scott Pressler crisscrossing that state, getting so many ballots that the Democrats didn't stand a chance. When they lost Pennsylvania, it was all over. And with your fingerprints on that victory in Pennsylvania, I can imagine that a lot of people are going to be happy to hear that you guys are standing there. Cliff, you and I know this. We probably talked about this over drinks in D.C. one night many, many years ago. But you and I, we believe in the 4-year campaign. I can't tell you how many times, and I used to get so annoyed with people like Gary Johnson because I think he ran in 2012 and then he ran in 2016, but he would disappear in the off years. And that's why I was like, I'm going to campaign against this guy, get him off of his butt and get out there. I kind of didn't expect things would get so crazy as they did during my presidential campaign. But nevertheless, it showed to me the value of the 4-year campaign. You've got to have people out on the streets working and activating in those off years, even the small elections, because we have to the Republican Party, unfortunately, Cliff, has low propensity voters. We got to turn them into high propensity voters. Is this how we do it?
Yeah, and I think you're hitting on what the Democrats realized, especially when they changed all of the rules. You have to play by those rules. And I've said this on your show before, but Republicans, unfortunately, a lot of times Republicans are responding. Republicans are reacting. They're not on offense. And this is a great example. 2024 was the first time, and I think we were more reacting to the failures of some of the operational, I would argue the lack of operations, the lack of logistics, the lack of playing by the rules in 2020 and 2022. So 24 was a response to that. But at least we responded, right? Don't get me wrong. Now, the reason that Republicans are finally waking up to this idea that there's no off year is we're responding to the Democrats. Let me give you an example. Here in Pennsylvania, we have 3 congressional districts that are swing districts. They're big targets. Those 3 are like in the top 10 nationally, and they're all in Pennsylvania. District 7, District 8, and District 10. 10 being Scott Perry, total patriot. All of those races were within 2 points. And so we targeted all of them. We won all 3, but they were all very tight races. Democrats, in December of 2024, so we didn't even get a month of a break, they are back up on the airways with negative TV against the Republicans. They are back in the district knocking on doors. And so responding is not always a bad thing, but I'm here to tell you that we really don't have any other choice. So this 4-year campaign is a constant, permanent infrastructure. It's why we're doubling down, and it's why the PA Chase must be involved in every race where we want to protect liberty.
Let's do it. And what's the website for that, Cliff, again, for those who are paying close attention?
Yeah, if people want to support us, it's pachase.com, pachase.com, to sponsor a ballot chaser. So many folks from Wake Up America really stepped up in 2024. So I appreciate you guys. It's $175 that covers a full day of their pay, their housing, and their gas cards. Every penny of that goes to the door knocker. So $175 if you can chip in. PHACE.com. Greatly appreciate you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. Jamie Marie Pope in the chat says, doors win wars. I love it. And she says, tell him to come to Louisiana, Chase, and help me get Cassidy out of there. Yeah. Cliff, I want to switch to our own special interest, that being liberty. You're a former Ron Paul, Rand Paul staffer. Happy birthday, Ron Paul. His 90th birthday party this last week in Texas. And it got me thinking about the future of the GOP. So many people were so heavily influenced by Congressman Ron Paul. And yet, and the Republican Party is largely made up of people who have great respect for Ron Paul. It wasn't like that when I was stuffing ballots in 2008 at CPAC for Ron Paul. When I was chasing up some ballots for Ron. But things have changed. He has like universal love and appeal. And yet we don't really see any candidates other than Thomas Massie and Rand Paul, potential candidates for president in 2028. And I don't think even either one of them is even potential candidates necessarily, who sort of share those ideals. I mean, what I hear from like our Republican candidates is this really strange rhetoric, like free markets and America's national interests are not aligned, and we need to cut off the Ronald Reagan libertarians, and we don't need to have an alliance with free market fundamentalists in the Republican Party. It's kind of this weird take where you have these people who are like, oh yeah, Ron Paul was right about everything, except he was also wrong about everything, and we need to stop international trade and have a new Smoot-Hawley, and we need to... Now, I see accounts with Frederick Bastiat as their profile picture arguing for tariffs. It's like bizarre world, Cliff. How do we navigate this political morass? What do you see as a future? And I mean, is it dark? Look into your crystal ball for us.
Yeah, look, one, happy birthday to Dr. Ron Paul, 90 years old. The Jason Rink video, I thought, brought back all the feels, kind of walking through, everything from 2008 forward. Look, I got into this late, right? I always get dinged for being a late bloomer when it comes to the liberty movement. I mean, I didn't find Ron really until 2010. When I was in college, kind of watching videos, and ended up interning and then being a staff assistant on the Hill, went to Iowa, and then obviously got involved with YAL. It's just a crazy journey. There's a moment at the end of Mr. Holland's Opus with Richard Dreyfuss. And if anybody out there's ever seen it, pretty much what happens is he teaches for, 30, 40, 50 years, thinks that his life was not really that great, and is unsure as he's retiring. And as he's leaving, there's this whole auditorium full of people. And, one of the students he impacted very early on in his career was now, this gorgeous female governor. And she comes back and says this line, I know it's a long story, but bear with me. It reminds me of Ron Paul, because she says, Mr. Holland, you may think that your life, did not amount to much and that you didn't have much of an impact, and you would be wrong. And I really felt a lot of the comments about Ron's 90th, all of the naysayers who would say, well, what did he ever do in Congress? And all the people that would say he wasn't effective, but to then see all the responses of people to say, no, they would be wrong, right? He has brought so many people to this movement. He has brought so many ideas now into the mainstream. I mean, America First, you talk about that as if that's some new thing. It's like, no, Ron Paul pioneered that. Right, you can make the argument Pat Buchanan pioneered that before Ron Paul. You could go down whatever lineage you want on each of these issues, but Ron was before his time. And I think moving forward, I mean, Austin, my biggest battle is, and I hate to be a broken record, it is easy to get tied up in a lot of these big races. The 2028 race, I'm going to always push people, run for local office. The 2028 race, I think, is going to be one of the most pivotal moments for not just the Republican Party, not just the Democrat Party, but the future of the country, meaning who the nominees are, because it is going to be a reset. It's post-Trump, and the Democrats are in a position where they have no leader, no idea where they're going to go. And this could be a moment where I think, honestly, the Democrats are more in peril than the Republicans. The Democrats double down on some of this crazy stuff. There is a chance they become the Whig Party. Like there is a chance they become a party that cannot win nationally. And I don't think it's that crazy that they might do it. They have yet to pivot back from 2024. I'm dumbfounded. I thought they'd move back immediately. They're not. They're doubling down. So that's why 2028 matters to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I'd love to see something like that. I hear that we're even deploying people to New Jersey because we might be able to turn New Jersey red, Cliff.
So another little announcement here for the show. We are sending some of our people. We have lent them out. Jack Tittarelli running for governor. We're working with a couple PACs, a couple organizations. And so there are going to be some of our trained folks on the ground there. That PAC that they're working with is attempting to knock 500,000 doors. So there's quite a few folks out there. They've got them all up in Airbnbs. So, I mean, listen, if Jack flips New Jersey, I think that we've got a lot of opportunity in 2026. It's going to be a tough race. Democrats are going to spend, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And the exciting thing is he didn't chase a single ballot, or at least not a full program back in 2021. Well, now the team that we put there is looking to knock 500,000 doors. So it's not Murphy as an opponent. If it was, I'd feel a lot more confident. But Mikey Sherrill is pretty radical, voted for a lot of the woke stuff. She's endorsed by Mamdani, the New York City mayoral candidate. So she's got a lot she's going to have to stand up for. But Jack, I met him. He's a great guy. If New Jersey goes red, I think that tells you a lot about what 26, 27, and 28 are going to look like.
Cliff, how do you think people like ourselves should respond when we hear people like J.D. Vance saying things like, oh, I'm a post-liberal and, it's time for, government. We need to exist. We need to recognize that there is no difference between government and our society or government and our businesses. That's the kind of thing that it hits me like a slap in the face from a wet fish. How do you respond to that? I mean, should I just shut up and just hope to God and maybe just pray that maybe some Jimmy Carter is going to come out of nowhere just like he did and he had 3% name recognition and then they're just going to save us in 2028? Is there any hope on the horizon that we're going to have somebody who actually speaks to our issues other than just sort of like, yeah, we'll free Ross and maybe we might, clean up the Department of Education a little bit. But do we have any hope of a person who believes what we believe? How should we respond when we hear things like that? And, again, one more time, wave your hands over your crystal ball for us and talk specifically about the Liberty candidates, because that's what I'm all about, Cliff. I'm really intensely interested in making America libertarian again. You know what I'm saying?
And I think anytime I'm looking at any national politician at the federal level that is making comments, my first thought is, what is the comment versus what is the policy, right? And is there a policy that we have alignment on? And if there is, let's triple down. And if there's not, is it worth calling somebody out? Is it worth disagreeing? And I think that's a lot of the battles that are tough to pick is, how do we have internal conflicts within the Republican Party that makes sense for coalitions to fight? And there's no easy answer there. We actually teach this at our candidate training and our activist training about how to pick the right battles. We call them hot fights, which you're looking for hot fights. And there's whole ways we can describe that. But, a lot of people pick some of these battles and it's like, if you picked the battle that you wanted to audit the Fed back in 2000, you were probably a nut job. It was not the right time, but somebody had to do it to start pushing it, right? And then all of a sudden, 2012, guess what? An actual bill to audit the Fed passes out of the House. And you've got folks like Amash and Massey now serving in Congress, which is wild back in the day. So I'm going to keep giving the same advice, which is if we want to see more Liberty candidates, and if you don't want to get burned out, run for state rep.
That won't burn you out at all there, Cliff. No, you're right. It's something to get excited about.
Yeah, and I tell activists, any leaders or activists or anybody commentating, if you're looking for the next Massey or the next Rand Paul, it's going to be difficult, right? And I could tell you, we've run some of these people for Congress. We've seen what the establishment does, but we can compete at the state Senate and state House level. I think a lot of people, if you jump to those big races, like running for president under the LP banner, it's a lot. It's a big lift.
Very few people can do that.
It's a big lift, but yeah, that's my continued advice. I'll tell Jamie Pope that down in Louisiana. When we have a couple of champions, that's when things start to rise up. But I think this idea of just shotgunning and trying to run for Congress, I just have not seen that be successful. So I don't want people to get tired of kind of putting up the effort.
Cliff Maloney from the PA Chase, thepachase.com. Thanks for all you do for Liberty, Cliff, and thanks for getting up so early. I know it's way early out there. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience or plug before we let you go?
On X at Maloney, Maloney, and pachase.com. It's a new day in America. That's why I love waking up on the Wake Up America show. And we appreciate you, Austin. Y'all take care.
Thanks, brother. You have a wonderful day. That was Cliff Maloney. We're glad to have him here. Looks like we just got some great news. Looks like we just unlocked the bonus content. That's fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for your financial support. Super grateful for that. And thank you to everyone who bought from the For Liberty shop. We hope that you guys enjoy the bonus content. You did it. The audience has spoken, and now we're plunging into the deep. You've chosen today's Defense Against the Dark Arts lesson. I just checked the Discord, and it looks like you guys have unlocked the Leviathan of licensing. So for those of you who are new, this is where we step out of the surface world and into the forbidden classroom of Professor Glub Thalassin. He's the keeper of the abyssal archives, the chronicler of the deep, and the only purple blob in history to simultaneously hold tenure at both Hogwarts and Atlantis Community College. All right. Now, prepare yourselves, guys, because the Leviathan is a creature that strangles opportunity with red tape tentacles, suffocating dreams before they breach the surface. We're now going to we're descending into the classroom of the deep, and we will hear from the professor himself. Don't go away. The bonus content coming up next. Defense Against the Dark Arts class.
The fence keeps them in, but slip up and you're on my plate.
Looks like breakfast is making a run for it. We got 3 hot meals trying to check out early from Alligator Alcatraz.
They can splash, they can sprint, but there's no escaping Alligator Alcatraz.
Caught 2.
The third?
Huh. The swamp's got its own way of catching runaways.
Mama was wrong. Gators don't need toothbrushes. Just an honest job making America great again.
Ah, welcome, surface dwellers. You've swum far to reach me. Down here, the water is dark, the currents are strong, and the creatures that lurk do not always have fins. Some have pens, some have stamps, and some have entire licensing boards. Today, we confront a great beast, the Leviathan of licensing. It drifts slowly through the oceans of commerce, invisible to the untrained eye, wrapping its tentacles around anything that tries to swim freely. It does not devour in one bite, no. It squeezes, slowly, squeezing your time, your gold, your will, until you abandon your quest altogether. Occupational licensing is when the state demands you gain permission to work in your chosen trade. It begins with lawyers and doctors, fields where competence can be a matter of life and death. But like any beast given a taste for power, it did not stop there. In Louisiana, you once needed a license to be a florist. In some states, hair braiders, often immigrant women supporting families, must spend hundreds of hours in cosmetology schools that don't even teach hair braiding. Tour guides in some cities must pass city-approved tests before telling stories about the town they grew up in. This is the Leviathan's first trick, convincing the public that it's for your safety, that without its grip, the waters would be full of charlatans and frauds. But remember, the most dangerous predators are often the ones guarding the gates. The Institute for Justice estimates licensing reduces employment in licensed fields by as much as 15 to 20% and raises prices for consumers by hundreds of dollars per year. Who benefits? Not you. And it raises consumers' prices. The established players in the industry benefit, the big fish. They lobby for more licensing because every new tentacle keeps smaller fish from entering their waters. Less competition means higher prices and secure market share. Who loses? The young, trying to enter a trade without years of debt. Immigrants bringing skills from abroad but unable to afford redundant certifications. And consumers forced to pay more for fewer options. In ancient ports, guilds controlled who could dock, who could trade, and who could sell. Ostensibly, it was to protect quality and reputation. In truth, it was to keep the outsiders out. Licensing is the modern guild system, the harbor master with an outstretched hand. The Leviathan survives because it has convinced both ruler and ruled that it is necessary. It says, without me, you'll be unsafe. But here's the truth. The market already has teeth. Reputation, reviews, repeat business. These are the sharks that patrol the waters of quality control. And the ruler finds the Leviathan useful. Licensing boards generate revenue through fees, and they allow the state to decide who may earn a living. It is a tool of control dressed as a life preserver. What do you do when you spot the Leviathan? Listen closely, students. Number 1, expose it. Share stories about absurd licensing laws in your community. Bring them into the sunlight. Leviathans dislike light. 2, support reformers. Groups like the Institute for Justice fight these laws. Join them. 3, undermine Leviathan's justification. Show the public that quality control exists without state permission slips. And 4, build parallel markets. In the age of the internet, many services can bypass physical restrictions. Find the current that flows outside the Leviathan's reach. Here is the moral for my surface students. If you allow the Leviathan of licensing to grow unchecked, you will one day need a permit to dream. It will not be satisfied until every skill, every talent, every trade requires its stamp. And remember, the worst part isn't the money it takes from you. It's the years. Years you could have been learning from the market, earning from your craft, building your own pond. The Leviathan doesn't just steal your treasure, it steals your time. And time cannot be replaced. Now, return to Austin. He waits on the shore to chart your course forward, and beware, the Leviathan still swims above.
Thank you, Professor Glub. Wow, that was a great class. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Professor Glub Thalassin, everyone, that's thanks to you guys unlocking the bonus content. We're so grateful for you guys stepping in and financing the Wake Up America shows for Liberty Network. It's always a pleasure to descend into the abyss with you. Folks, you just heard it straight from the deep. The Leviathan of licensing is real, it's dangerous, and it's feeding on every opportunity in every state in this country. Don't complain about it. Fight it. Shine the light. Call it out. When the opportunity comes to cut off one of their tentacles, be ready with the blade. We're going to take a little break, maybe a whole day. We'll be back tomorrow. So make sure that when you exit, where do you exit? You exit through the Griff shop. We've got a brand new product today in the shop, the AR-15 crisscrossed embroidered denim jackets. Do you have great jeans? I've got great jeans. Head to the Liberty shop at forlibertyshop.com. The griffshop.com will take you there as well. That would make an amazing gift for somebody. Go ahead and order it now so you've got it ready to give to them for Christmas. The patriot in your life who hates the ATF. The front of the jean jacket says abolish the ATF. The back has crisscrossed AR-15s embroidered. And on the wrist, on the right wrist, you can see right there an beautiful little Gadsden flag. Don't tread on me, snake. That is a gorgeous denim jacket. Joni, I'm so glad that you enjoyed the show. Jimmy Joe Patty, Drew Van Runkle, Mighty Megatron, Y2 Joe. Guys, don't forget to sign up for the Expat Money Summit. I will be on a panel there. If you guys, it's totally free, but if you want the VIP package, use my name, the discount code Austin. You'll save 20% off a VIP ticket. You'll get to see me. It's all about Javier Milei and Latin America, how to safely and legally offshore your money. I've been thinking about doing things like this as well. I actually last night was for some reason I couldn't sleep, so I was like thinking about what it would be like if I like started a double life in Argentina. But maybe I just start a single life in the United States and then just have like a toe in Argentina in case things get bad. Check out expatmoneysummit.com. That's expatmoneysummit.com. Sign up. It's free, totally free, and you'll get to see me in an awesome panel talking about liberty in South America. It's going to be a great conference. So expatmoney.com, EXPAT, expatmoneysummit.com, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow here on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Bye, guys.
Recently, while touting gun seizures in a city that has some of the most authoritarian gun laws in the United States, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch lamented, "The number of illegal guns that we've seen used in New York City has exploded since 3D technology has come about." She's not alone. Homemade guns are increasingly sophisticated and available almost everywhere. That's a good thing. American dedication to privately owned weapons alarms observers from more restrictive countries. Much to the amusement of many Americans, it should be noted, whose ancestors fled those places in search of greater freedom, and found it in part in the ability to arm themselves and to generally flip the bird to government. That means that from the foundation of the U.S., privately owned weapons and their protection by the Second Amendment have had a strong ideological component. Now, innovators around the world are embracing private arms as expressions of liberty and creating simple designs that can be built in home workshops with commonly available tools and parts. Critics argue that 3D printed DIY firearms and their enthusiasts are spreading libertarianism around the world. Let's hope they're right. Summarizing events at June's Monericon conference in Prague, an annual meeting devoted to privacy-enhancing technologies and distributed systems, security expert Zoltan Firedi described a presentation by the pseudonymous Zay Carioca, designer of the recently unveiled Urutau, a 9mm select-fire firearm designed to be constructed with a 3D printer and components purchased at any hardware store. Rather than focus on his creation, Zay Carioca instead championed 3D printed firearms as companions to cryptocurrency in challenging the power and reach of governments. His speech blurred the lines between technology, ideology, and extreme libertarian politics, commented Firedi. He added of the speaker's message, "Just as the freedom to transact via cryptocurrency is now seen as a fundamental human right, so too should be the right to bear arms, worldwide." To that end, Zay Carioca includes with his freely downloadable Urutau designs a document co-authored with fellow weapons designer Ryan Smith. Dubbed the New Second Amendment, The authors state their deep conviction that the unlimited right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental human right. To that end, they make it their objective that a governing entity must find it impractical or impossible to overcomplicate or prevent the production of a privately manufacturable weapon. Zay Carioca appears to have succeeded. In January, with Yannick Veilleux-Lepage of the Institute of Security and Global Affairs at Leiden University, Ferretti described the Urutau as much easier to build than the FGC-9, a semi-automatic 9mm firearm primarily constructed with 3D printed parts and simple tools. They added that the assembly instructions for the Urutau are exceptionally well designed. The FGC-9, Fuck Gun Control 9mm, was designed by Jacob Duigu, a former German soldier who went by the pseudonym J. Stark before he died under mysterious circumstances after being questioned by German police. It was refined by an American identified by the New York Times as licensed firearms manufacturer John Ehrlich. In a documentary about Europe's underground DIY weapons movement, a masked Duigu said that to bear firearms is a human right, and that people need to have the same force on the individual level as the executive force of the government entity that is ruling over them. This American brand of libertarianism has historically been a tough sell in many other parts of the world. Even if some people believed it in theory, strict laws made buying a gun so difficult that the ideology was almost beside the point, wrote Lizzie Dearden and Thomas Gibbons Neff of the Times. The FGC-9 is changing that. The FGC-9 quickly became globally popular. In 2022, France 24 reported the FGC-9 to be in wide use by rebels in Myanmar, fighting that country's brutal government. They use the DIY guns for training, for hit-and-run missions, and to fill in the gaps in supplies of commercially produced arms. The Urutau is designed as a simpler-to-produce successor to the FGC-9. It's intended to make restrictions even more difficult for governments to impose. And what's interesting is that both it and the FGC-9 were designed by non-Americans who embraced the idea that individuals should be put on an even footing with government enforcers. That's a major shift for a movement that began when Cody Wilson, a former law student from Austin, Texas, created the first 3D printed single-shot pistol in 2013. That gun, dubbed the Liberator, was also intended to enhance freedom and limit the reach of government. The movement and the ideology behind it have found fertile ground outside the United States. Scofflaw as a means to expand liberty isn't limited to the field of firearms, of course. Zay Carioca gave his presentation at a conference where the main focus was on cryptocurrency and encryption, two technological means for putting human activity beyond state control. Marijuana is currently legal for recreational use in roughly half of U.S. states, but it remains illegal at the federal level. Those states choose to ignore federal law under pressure from residents who have long enjoyed the stuff with little concern for its legal status. Decades ago, the movement to legalize homosexuality got its jumpstart from the Stonewall Uprising. In 1969, gays and lesbians streamed into the streets of New York City to violently confront police after the latest in a series of raids on the Stonewall Inn, a popular bar. And, perhaps most famously, Prohibition ended in the U.S., largely because mass defiance, moonshiners, and bootleggers made enforcement impossible. It makes sense that people from countries with restrictive firearms would take the lead in a movement that seeks to make those laws unenforceable. Americans may have cultivated the ideology and offered inspiration, but the movement picks up support where it's most needed. That's not to say the U.S. is immune to gun banners. As mentioned above, New York City has authoritarian laws, as do other jurisdictions. Zay Carioca and Ryan Smith are clear that their new Second Amendment is for Americans too, should the government and its laws become more restrictive. Legal constraints like the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution are finite, vulnerable to ignorance, and have national boundaries. But our guiding principle does not, they wrote. Americans delivered a libertarian DIY firearms movement to the world. The world may help preserve it.